There we go. Okay, so we are going to program using the desktop app first, and then we're going to take the sequence that we create and we're going to move it over to the wheel. So let me jump over to night sky here. And I want to probably have this view. That'll work. So yeah, I think we're good to go now. So what I've got here, you can see a little bit of an overview of this app in our last live stream. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a sequence kind of quickly, hopefully relatively quickly here. And let me unmute this so that hopefully you can hear the audio. And let me just check our levels here. Yeah, that'll probably work. Okay, so using our timeline editor here, pardon me, I'm just going to start with this this kind of star field nebula type galaxy cosmos image. And maybe the first few beats of the song will just be this pulsing for a moment. And now I actually want to change the timing of this. This is currently at 300. I'm going to knock that down to 270 and see what that does. So we're changing the image height so that it scrolls through the image a little bit faster at 80 frames per second that we have set there. And let's see if that syncs up to the music a little better. Yeah, pretty good. And I might just start it. I'll drag it a few frames forward to see how that looks. So, beginning of this performance, you'd have the pulsing as the song starts to pick up. Okay, and then right around here, I probably want to switch to a new pattern. So right about there, right where that starts to come in. What do I want to switch to? Maybe we'll go to something else a little bit simple. There we go. And I'm going to change the width of this so that it gets patterned around the wheel about 4 times. This wheel has 325 LEDs in the strip length, so it's like, I don't know, 975 LEDs total in the wheel, but 325 is the number we need to worry about. Maybe I want to have this go 4 times around the wheel, so that's going to be roughly 81 pixels wide, and then that's going to, if we turn this on, we can see it's being duplicated at these points right here, and then there's a little bit extra, pardon me, there's a little bit extra on the end there. So, but I think that's going to work good. And actually, as it's playing through, right here, I'm going to bring it in again, but I'm going to go double the speed. So I'm going to change this to 81 like before, but instead of 330, I'm going to go with 165 tall. So it's going to move through this image a lot faster. So we're going to get one measure at the original speed of that kind of blue cheetah pattern, and then we'll get double time. It'll look like this. And then from here, I think I'll move into this pattern. And I want to go slower on that. I want to actually change the width a little bit and go a little bit slower on it, I think. So rather than 190, we'll go up to 300. And then maybe we'll bring it in twice and change up the look of it a little bit. So the second time through, let's go even slower. Let's bring it to 500. So we got it patterned 4 times in this instance, and then in this instance it's going to get patterned. Let's go 3 times. Just about like that. Okay, so first instance of it, it's patterned 4 times and it's moving fast. And then it's patterned 3 times and moving slow after that. And then we're going to go into some comets. What do we got? Oh, we don't want that. We want that to be quite a bit wider. Maybe patterned 3 times around the wheel. Ooh, and that's super fast. Let's go. And then maybe another instance of it at double the number of comments, or maybe we'll just go up to 4. Let's see what that looks like. And a little bit more jittery. Oops, I changed the wrong thing there. I changed the first instance of it. So we were at 300 and 108 on the first instance. The second instance we want to be at 81 and 200. Let's see what that looks like. And I need to slide that forward a little bit, get the timing. And then I think I want to go into, I don't know, why not this pattern? Get this aligned properly. And maybe I want this twice around the wheel, so we'll go 161. Maybe 162 works a little better. There we go. And then maybe I'll just tone it down for a moment with a fade in, fade out. And from here, we're going to get into a okay, so right there, we got a change of pace in the song. There we go. Now, this is one that looks nice when it's the exact same width as the wheel. So I'm going to see what that looks like. This pattern, this pulsing fading into a more active pattern. And then maybe when I get there, I'm going to double time it. So I'll add another instance of it. I can scroll my playhead to get them to match up. Oh, I have to change the width for this instance. Okay. And actually they match up pretty good. Basically what I want to happen is I want them to meld right into each other, and then the second one I'm going to change the image height in order to have it maybe speed up a bit. So we were at 360, I'm going to bring that down to 180 in this instance. So we're going to see it go from kind of a walking speed to a running speed. There we go. And then we'll bring it in at walking speed again. Okay, zoom in to kind of dial in that transition a little bit more. We want so there's a jump from there to there. So let me just bring the playhead until these line right up, and then slide this over to the playhead. There we go, and then it slows back down again. And then here we'll go back into the first kind of pulsing pattern that we had. To happen a little sooner. And then another instance of this at half the speed. Half the speed would be back to 330. Oh, we can go even slower than that. Let's go up to 500 and see what that does. Oh, I gotta make sure that each instance is the proper width. And is there anything else I want to add to this? Maybe I'll just finish it off with this. And we will make this, I don't know, 81, I guess. And 180. Yep, that's enough for now. So let's watch this through from the beginning, and we'll go. and then double speed. And back to regular speed, and then into our pulsing purple nebula. All right, there it is. We're a minute and a half into a song there. We don't need to finish out the whole entire thing for this. I'm going to save the sequence and then let's see, verify that I've got it here. I do have it, and all of the images did make it into, yep, they did make it into the right folders. So Star Pusher takes care of making sure all of the patterns or images get into the right folders. All I have to do now is write this to the SD card, throw it on the wheel, and I still, as I said on the last live stream, I still cannot show that process until I'm ready to kind of unveil the hardware side of this. After we get our patent stuff figured out in the next few weeks. Thinking about doing an unveiling event sometime in the next few weeks where we are finally able to share all of the details that are going on in this thing. But for right now, I'm going to have to be a little mysterious and just throw this into the wheel without actually showing you that. So let me make sure I'm getting everything into the proper folders, or getting everything onto the proper SD card here, which is this one. No, it's not that one. Where is it? Come on. There it is. And I can just clear all this out. Yep. And throw all this in. Are you sure? Yes. Okay, and let's switch and let you look at what that folder structure kind of looks like. So folder 1, which is going to correspond to one of the buttons on this this handheld remote. We also do have Wi-Fi connectivity. I'm not going to be using that today because we're working some stuff out with that app right now. But I'm going to be showing you everything using the infrared remote today. But basically, on the infrared remote, you can see. Let's do this. Yeah. So on the infrared remote, basically these solid colored buttons. There's 16 of them. These buttons correspond to different folders. So this one over here is going to be folder 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then folder 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, those are reserved for the patterns that are in our sequences. So we call up the sequences by with the DIY buttons. So we assigned this sequence to number 1, which means it's coming from folder 11. And let me show that. We're going to get into this remote a bit more in a few minutes here. But yeah, so we've got folders 1 through 10 here, which can just be full of whatever images you want if you are just kind of testing stuff out to see what it does on the wheel, see what settings you can modify and modes you can play around with the different options that there are. So these are just kind of catch-alls, and that's, let me actually switch our view. So here are the patterns or images that we used for this sequence. And when we save the sequence, it puts sequence 1 into folder 11, and sequence 2 goes in folder 12, etc., up through folder 16. And you can see each instance of the pattern that we used got written into this folder, and there's a little bit of a bug in our naming convention right now. It's supposed to remove the old size info from the image. So the original image was 400 by 300, and it got rewritten, or it got reformatted to 400 by 270 in order to get the timing aspects that we wanted out of that image, and it just kind of tacked that onto the end. So I'm going too far into the weeds with this right now. Anyways, you can see, if you look at the last size that's listed on there, that's the size that the image is. But that got put into folder 11, and then we can also see that here's an NSS file, a night sky sequence file. That night sky will read as a sequence when you call it up, and there's many different ways of triggering the sequence to start, either manually with the remote or the Wi-Fi app, or with a motion trigger based on the accelerometer. Anyways, we'll, I didn't actually do that. Let's set a motion trigger on this before I forget, and I already did forget. Basically, this first pattern in the in our sequence here, which actually you can't see behind the play and pause buttons, but it is this pattern right here, our little nebula night sky image. If I right click on that and I hit add motion trigger, you'll see that its name up in the top of the timeline here changes to green, and that means we added an accelerometer driven motion trigger to this. And I actually want this motion trigger to trigger at 90 degrees. So when the wheel, say the wheel is like laying on the floor, when I pick it straight up and it turns roughly 90 degrees, that's when it's going to trigger it to start. So you can wait for a visual cue or an audio cue, etc., in your performance and have it start on that motion. Or if the wheel is like sitting off to the side and then you start rolling it as soon as it rolls 90 degrees or starts spinning 90 degrees. Basically, it's looking for roughly 90 degrees of motion in any axis, or around any axis. So yeah, you can use motion triggers. I am going to set that, and I am going to resave the sequence now with that. And it can't, because it's being used by another process. What did I do? I hit OK. Uh-oh. Okay, so that is a definite bug in the software here. What process is it being used by? Because I copied it and then I haven't opened it. I don't know. But strange. Is it overwriting it? It does seem to be actually writing it, or trying to. Let me see if it looks. Yeah, I don't know if it actually wrote it. So we'll find out when we throw this on the wheel. I am going to save this newest version. To the wheel. Do I want to copy it? Yes. All right, we're gonna play it the way it was before, and I'm gonna throw these on the wheel now. In just a moment, let me just eject. So while I have to be secretive about some of this hardware, I might choose to. Let me get that in there. I might choose to like put some type of other, I don't know, pattern or, I don't know, something else to show you while I can't actually show what's going on. I've got to step away from the counter here and actually, yeah, I think this is good to go. Let me just check on this. Okay, we got the monitor and aha, okay. Okay then. Yeah, I fried that sequence with the bug. So that's what I get for running beta software in a live stream. But we can still put this onto the wheel and actually see what it looks like on the wheel without the sequence, or without the music anyway. So as you are staring at a screen with nothing happening, I will narrate what I'm doing here. In order to put this on to the wheel, onto this current version of our wheels, which is not quite the version that we'll be unveiling in a few weeks, but I have to physically put the SD card into a power pack inside the wheel, and then assemble the wheel, which you can hear right now. And I think I can actually show a bit of this process here. Let's see if I can get a camera over here. There we go. Yeah. Let's try to switch over to this camera. And you can see a very disassembled looking wheel there, which we'll throw together and then take a look at some of these patterns we just created. So currently I've got it just kind of potato chipped because it's only partially assembled at the moment. And so what I'll often do, let me try to get fully in the screen here. Well, let me set this back. So I'll generally just kind of bounce it into place like that. And we don't have our bolts in yet, which is totally fine at the moment. I'm just going to do a quick check. Actually, I don't know if I fully charged the batteries on this wheel or not. But let's pull the power plugs and see what it looks like. So as I pull out these little plugs here, I am allowing, there we go. Looks like we got good batteries all the way around. So that powers up the wheel, and it's currently set up to start in folder 1, which are the patterns before we resized them, but I can manually go to folder 11. And then this has the patterns that we sized particularly to the wheel. And I can scroll through and see them all. So I can see this one has 2 different speeds just as we set it. Here's the pulsing white to pink pattern. Here is one of the blue cheetah patterns. Here's the slower version of that blue cheetah pattern. So let's leave the wheel just kind of doing some stuff as I finish assembling. So earlier, as I was kind of showing, or not showing, I was explaining that I had to physically put an SD card into the wheel. Pretty soon, you won't have to do that. Some of the software we're currently working on Wi-Fi sending of files to the wheel. We currently have Wi-Fi control in beta for telling it what pattern to play or what sequence to start, etc. And the next piece we have to add to that is actually just wirelessly sending files to the wheel. And hardware has been the main focus the past several months with this. We've upgraded, and this one is not totally upgraded to the new hardware version yet, but a lot of user friendliness and further standardization of the parts have been the focus, so that we can actually ship these out, and then all the software stuff is easy to ship out or deliver a new version of firmware or a mobile or desktop app. So after getting hardware to folks, we can then keep working on the software a bit more. So what I always do when I'm assembling a wheel is I get all of the bolts started just a few turns so that I got some wiggle room in each joint to kind of help me get all the other sections aligned and the bolts started in the other sections. And then I'll go around and I'll tighten them down completely after that. Did I get them all? I feel like I missed one or two, but they all feel good. All right, now we can get into some of the fun stuff. The functions of the remote here. And actually, I think we're going to use the overhead cam here somewhat. Oh, the overhead cam does not show the entire circumference of the wheel. Let's see. You start to get an idea of what it should look like. I need to mount this camera up higher because that's as far as out as it'll zoom, but at least with this setup now, you can see, actually, how's this look? There we go. So now I can show you what button I'm using on the remote, and you can kind of see the whole wheel, at least most of the wheel, all at once. So, all right, so when I programmed this, I had all of my images that I was using in folder 1. And so those are, folder 1 has like the raw images, and then folder 11 has the images that we reformatted, resized, so that we can get different effects from the same image or pattern in the wheel. And so we are in folder 11 right now, and if I use these red up and down arrows, these red up and down arrows will let me scroll through the different patterns in folder 11. You can also see here, let's see, you can't see it here. I don't know if it's visible or not, but we've got a LED inside of the wheel here that I'm turning it on and off. Let me actually go to a pattern that's going to be less distracting for showing this. I want to go back to the the pulsing pattern here. And now I don't know if that's easier to see. It definitely doesn't seem like it is. But I've got a status light inside the wheel here, visible right there, that you can that helps you know where your main controller section of the wheel is. But actually, for right now, you can't see it anyway, so I'm not going to worry about it. But I can scroll through the different patterns in the wheel by or in that folder by red arrow up and down. All right, so we've got a lot of other buttons on here. I'm just going to walk through them starting from the top. So, and everything that I'm showing on this is available on the Wi-Fi app as well. And sometimes this camera can even focus on things. All right. So the R gives you a random pattern from the wheel. If I hit R here, it will just go to some random pattern in the folder that you're in. So that's what the R button does. Lets you look through different patterns. The G lets you control the gyro mode or accelerometer. So there's a gyrometer / accelerometer inertial measurement unit inside this wheel. And so it sounds cooler, I think, to say gyro than to say accelerometer. So I often refer to it as gyro or accelerometer interchangeably. But remember, if you remember G for gyro, you can change the gyro mode with that button. So right now the gyro mode is set to off, or the accelerometer mode is set to off. There are two active modes for the gyrometer or the gyro in the wheel that are motion reactive. So right now it's just scanning through our image. The same as, actually let me go over to the computer. This is easier with a visual of the 2D image. Easier to explain with a visual of the 2D image. So if I go to our pattern here, Oh, I should probably switch back to the right monitor there. Just a moment. Okay, so right now we are looking at, I believe it's this pattern. Actually, let me go to the pattern visualizer and get into the right folder, in the proper pattern folder here. No, it wasn't that one. Oh, that is why. Okay. Well, so with this pattern, I think we were at 108, so it's playing 3 times. So essentially what you're seeing on the wheel out there at the moment, that is what this pattern looks like on the wheel. And currently the wheel is just scrolling through every line of pixels in this image at 80 frames a second. And you can actually grab this scroll bar here and scrub through the image and see what it might look like if we were able to decouple the scrolling from the 80 frames per second and instead attach it to motion of the wheel, which is exactly what we are doing in our gyro modes. So there's 2 different gyro modes. One of them will scroll through the images, will basically turn off your frames per second mapping to the image, and it will, depending on how many degrees of motion the wheel is currently moving, it will map that to some row of the image, and it'll play that row of the image. So if you move the wheel left, it may go this direction. If you move the wheel right, it may go this direction. So that is one gyro mode, and that's called your Y offset, which I think is Gyro Mode 2. And there's also your X offset, which essentially, and I can't really show it in this app. I can only kind of show it on the wheel, which I'll do in a second here. But if you can imagine that LED number 1 is like right here in the wheel, it's just going to transpose that, and it's going to move LED 1 to somewhere else in the wheel based on how the wheel is moving. So if you have a pattern like this where these 3, I don't know, I guess we'll call them comets, are kind of staying statically in, each portion of the wheel, each third of the wheel. Well, if we're in X offset mode, then as you move the wheel, these 3 comets will rotate around to different positions on the wheel, depending on which direction you're moving. So let's go take a look at that on the wheel. Okay, so as I put it into one of the gyro modes, when I get it into there we go. So now we should be in Y offset. So when I start to move the wheel, you can see them start to animate, but you're not going to see them animate a lot because, at least for this pattern, this isn't a good pattern to show the Y offset mode with, because they're staying in the same place. They're just kind of like shimmering and changing intensity. So if I stop right here, it's just showing that same row of the image over and over. If I start to move it, it shows some of the other rows. So that's Y offset. And you can see there's a little bit of drift. It's going to keep moving after I set it. Like there's some momentum actually that goes into it. But if I go again, we should now, actually, is this, no, so we're back off now. Okay, now we are in our X offset mode, and wow, that focus on this guy is weird. All right, so now as I move this, we can see the three, oh, and I'm gonna have to change my camera position here, I think, in order to show this properly. Okay, so now as I move the wheel, and actually we need to show this probably full screen on this camera. There we go. So now as I move this, we'll see the locations of those three comets kind of change as I rotate the wheel. So this this guy that's down at the bottom here, it's actually rotating up. If I turn this way, it's gonna go up higher. All right, you know what? I got a pattern that's even easier to show this on. So where is that? Okay, so this pattern is really good to show our Y offset. So if you remember, this pattern is made of like cross hatching, and right now it's just showing one row of it, the wheel's not moving. But as I start to move the wheel, they start to move. If I stop moving the wheel, they slow down and come to a stop. So let's see. I don't have a lot of space in here to actually move this wheel around, but you can see you get some cool effects, and sometimes you get some drift. If you move it and stop it suddenly, you'll get a little bit of drift sometimes. This is something that you learned how to counteract the drift, so you can control when it drifts or not. But as you can see, it drifted there. But if I'm turning this way and I just stop a little bit, I can like counteract and get it to kind of do what I want it to do. So, so that is X offset, and actually, what you'll notice is when you're in Y offset, where did I put the remote? When you're in Y offset, the pattern, if the wheel's not moving, the pattern is going to move kind of as normal, as you normally expect it to. And here we go. But let's change it to, so now we're off. All right, so now we are in the other mode, where if I move one direction, it'll start to move a lot faster. And if I move in the other direction, it starts to slow down. See how you can see one, like the blue, the blues are now slowing down, and the greens will speed up, or the greens will slow down and the blue will speed up, depending on the wheel, what the wheel is doing. So, all right, so those are some gyro modes. I'll have to do another video. I'll definitely do another video kind of showing different gyro modes, more options that you have with those. But what else have we got here that I can kind of show you? All right, So I'm gonna, how's this gonna work? Can we get this? Yeah, I'm gonna have to throw this on the ground again, I think. How's that? You can mostly see the wheel now, right? All right, so another thing we can do is we can change, so what have we gone through? We've gone through our random mode, we've gone through gyro modes. We didn't talk about these buttons up here yet, actually. So we've got brightness up and down right here. And, we can also pause patterns wherever they're at. And then we've got a blackout mode right here. So this power button doesn't actually turn the wheel on and off, it just turns the LEDs on and off. So I can just quickly put the wheel in blackout mode, and that lets me, not draw attention to the wheel if it's not time yet to start that part of the performance, but you need to have it on stage. You can keep it in blackout mode until you are ready to pick it up and go, or you can put it in blackout mode and then have it come out of blackout mode when you're ready to start a sequence or a pattern. And if we go to a more active pattern here, then we can see, we can also pause the wheel with the play pause button. So it'll just freeze on whatever frame it is. It's kind of like gyro mode when gyro is waiting for motion, except for motion won't actually do anything. It's just kind of gonna chill and hang there until you unpause it. And then we've got all of our folder buttons that we kind of walked through already. Here we've got pattern up and down, which we already showed. And then we've got gyro sensitivity right here, or gyro coefficient. And you can change that to map, it's basically an integer between 1 and 20. I think I default it at 2, but you can slow it, you can decrease it or increase the sensitivity so that a little bit of motion in the wheel will cause a much larger change in the animation of the wheel. And then here we've got our interlace mode, which, for lack of a better term, basically simulates going faster than you might want to, or that you normally might play the pattern back at. So right now the wheel is set to play these patterns at 40 frames per second, but we want to often go a lot faster than that. And what I can do is I can simulate that, but I can skip, depending on my interlace level, I'll skip a certain number of rows per image, in the image as I'm playing it back. So I can essentially double the speed of the image, or even get like interesting strobe effects as it jumps through the image a lot faster. So let's try that. So this is at interlace level 0. If I change it to level 1, you'll see it starts playing a little faster. 2 goes even faster, 3 goes even faster, 4 goes even faster. And essentially you just kind of start to get some like crazy hyper effects. So you kind of get a strobe effect. And I'm going to leave that at a higher interlace level right now. And then I'm going to play with my frames per second, which your quick and slow button over here does. Oh, my phone's ringing. 1 second. Sorry about that. So we've got our quick and slow buttons over here actually changes the frames per second. And you can get some pretty cool effects by actually slowing down your frame rate while you're using a high interlace setting. And get almost like strobe-like effects. So we're slowed down to like, I don't know, maybe like 15 frames a second right here. And we're also skipping past a bunch of frames in the image, so it makes the image really jerky, but also kind of adds a pretty cool effect to it. So that's something that can be fun to play with, and yeah, I don't know, I like it. That's why we built it. So let me actually slow our interlace down and bring our frames per second back up to normal here. And you know, actually before I do that, I'm going to put that back where it was because I'm going to show you what the favorites button does on here. So there, we have a cool effect here. So as you're playing around with different settings on the remote or with the Wi-Fi app, you may find something that you really like you know, the kind of jerky weirdness that's going on with it at the moment. So you may not remember what you hit on here or what the settings are. So we've actually got a button on here. It's called the flash button. It'll write, if you hit the flash button, it's going to write the current settings. It's going to let it blinked purple to let me know, like, okay, we wrote your settings to the SD card inside the wheel. And so I'll pull the SD card out in a moment here and show you what that looks like. But basically the flash button, it writes all your current settings, the pattern name, the folder, all of that, so that you can retrieve them at a later point, and you can actually program those patterns with all those settings right in Star Pusher on the desktop. And then at the bottom, we've got a couple things. We've got most of these are unused right now, but this bottom button over here will turn on and off the status LED, which you can't really see in this video anyway. And I think that's about it. That's all I'm going to show for now. That's all that we need for this video. So I'm going to pull this apart here in a moment, and we'll take a look at that. Oh, why am I doing that? So I'm going to pull this apart, and then we'll take a look at the SD card, see what the settings were that I just saved from this animation, and then I can show you how to actually set it up in Star Pusher so that it will play exactly like this in whatever sequences you set up. Yeah, I'm cheating with the screw, with the electric driver here. Okay, there it is. Oh, and then the last thing I'll do is I'm going to put our little power plugs back into the wheel. They'll shut off power to every section, so I'm not killing battery when I don't need to. When I shut off the main power section, or the main controller section, everything else freezes. Each section has its own battery, but the signal comes from the main controller. For now, anyway. There's some firmware upgrades going on that will give a lot more flexibility to that. So I'm going to kind of jiggle this apart like that. Take that out, and then I can slide my controller right out of the wheel, which I'm going to step off camera for again, you know, at least for another few weeks until I can show you what's going on inside here. And we'll go back to the computer and take a look at what we've got on this SD card. I feel like USB used to work a lot better than it does. Or maybe there's just something wrong with my computer, but I feel like half the time I plug in a USB device, it doesn't recognize it. I'm not sure why that is. And maybe it's just this this card reader starting to die. Let's see if we've got an alternate here. Well, this is fun. There we go. Okay, so well, you'll be able to see better on the smaller monitor. So let's bring it over here. And you can see there's this favorites.txt. When I open that, it's going to give me this. And basically we'll see, I only saved one thing to this file. But basically, if I had saved several, we would see it doing, adding them like that. So we can see, you know, the first one that I saved was this pattern, the blue-green weave, 325 by 360, gives me the brightness, the frames, the frames per second. So I had the frames per second dialed down to 10, and I had our interlace up at 17. So it was playing through this image here. Which my head's in front of right now. It's playing through this image here. It's playing 1 out of every 17 rows. Oh my God, please stop. I gotta figure out, maybe it's just that USB hub that I'm using. Okay, so it's playing through this image 10 frames per second, and skipping every 17 rows of this image. So, or well, actually, I think it was this image that we had that set to. So let's go to, yeah. Our gyro coefficient was 2. We were in gyro mode 1, which is, I think it was actually in Y offset there. Duplication was turned on. But I think there's maybe some work to do to make this a little bit more human readable. Basically, if duplication was at 0, duplication would be off. Duplication was on. Our gyro mode was set to 1. So we'll do some work to make this a little bit more human readable and make sense with our app here. But let's try to recreate those settings. So our frames per second, let me turn that on. You can turn on or off any of these pattern settings just by clicking the name of it, and it will it will show that it is then active by ungraying out the setting. And interlace level 17. And what did I break? Our gyro is off. Isn't that nice? Let's get out of there and reopen it. We'll just start using the app. Go to folder 1, pattern visualizer, drag that in. Okay, so now it should do what we want. So turn on these two settings, change that to 10, and change our interlace level to 17, and we will see that same crazy effect that we had on the wheel that we can see we had set using our favorites here. So basically, there's a lot of options available. We only played with like, I don't know, 5 different images for this entire time, and we're able to get many different effects by changing the speed, the orientation, the gyro offset, the frames per second, the interlace settings, brightness, width, height, etc. of the image. You probably, and maybe this is a challenge I'll do at some point for a live stream, is like take one image and see if I can make a 2-minute performance out of one image just by changing different settings of that image. So you have a lot of options here to dial an image to fit a certain song or certain feel or style or sequence that you want to do. Not to mention it's easy to create other images. So that's probably another thing that we're going to do. It's probably something we should do in another live stream, is talk about what I'm thinking about when I am creating patterns from scratch. And this is gonna give me a seizure if I keep staring at this. So I'm gonna change these all back to standard. That looks nicer. Yeah, and yeah. So like for instance, this image. Actually, we'll go here. So this image is a pretty simple lightning bolt pattern. I mean, you could draw this up in Photoshop or any. You can do it in Microsoft Paint or any image editor. You can create something like this in just a few clicks in 30 seconds. Just a white bolt coming down through here with some blue streaks coming off of it, and then bring it into Star Pusher. And so I mean, this over on this side is the original image. This over on this side is the image now that we've resized it, and it just blends pixels together really nicely. I can change this to 180 by, actually I need to resize my window in order to access the settings that I want here. There's another little bug, is I can't actually reach that window. I need to add a little scroll bar here, but we'll just jump over to the other monitor real quick while I do this. So if I wanted to change the height, etc., or if I wanted to bring it way down, say for whatever reason I only wanted it to be 10 pixels wide, and if I go look in the pattern visualizer right now, it keeps those settings, and we can see what that looks like. Maybe I only want this to be, I don't know, we'll turn off duplication, and maybe it's only now gonna be 60 wide. So we have this, like, using that same pattern, we have this one single, I don't know, comet or whatever that can travel around the wheel, and we can put this in our, and I should have done this, I should have saved this out. and we can put it into our X offset mode, and then as the wheel moves around, this comet will move around the wheel in crazy patterns all over the place. So that's all I'm going to do for today. That's my live stream. Last week's was horrendous technical train wreck, and I ended up streaming for, I don't know, almost 2 hours, and I had so many issues with the stream, and I just cut it out completely. But I think from here I'm set to do this weekly, and as the weeks go on, I'll be able to show more and more, and yeah, we'll be releasing new features and unveiling new stuff all the time. So with that said, thanks for watching, and hopefully see you next week. Bye bye.